Okay, friends, so where we were at last week, we read the first chapter of Miss Hickory. And remember, what I'm thinking of is how Miss Hickory got kicked out of her home. Unfortunately, she was living in this beautiful lilac bush, but the owners of the house are going to Boston and she can no longer stay there for the winter. And she's up in New Hampshire, which is close to where I grew up, where it gets really, really cold and snowy. So she's needing to find a new home, and together we're going to read chapter 2 and figure out what happens. And remember, she was mad at Crow because she didn't believe him when he said, "You're going to have to find a new home." And at the very end of chapter 1, she was saying that she would go find the old barn cat, Mr. T. Willard Brown, to get the truth. So let's see what happens. Moon Before Snowfall is the chapter 2 title. "A good day to finish my canning," Miss Hickory said to herself as she built up a wood fire and started toward the forest for berries. It was a beautiful day, crisp but with warm sunshine, that made her forget Crow's morning visit. Crow was so ready with raucous chit-chatter that she did not take him seriously. "He always has something to say and likes to hear himself say it," she reminded herself as she put a small rush basket over her arm and stepped briskly off her twig feet. Although the torches that the goldenrod had lighted along the October road towered above Miss Hickory's head. Sorry, friends, I'm just needing to plug in. She found her way easily in and among them. Their brightness made her feel happy. So the torches that the goldenrod had lighted, they're talking about autumn, right, in New England, where the trees get really bright. Bright orange, bright red. We know we have some changing colors here, too, in Washington. Farther on, the purple asters made a royal canopy beneath which she walked proudly until she came to the edge of the woods. She left the road and was at once in the deep green of the pines. Miss Hickory's nose was as keen as a fox's. The smell of pine trees never failed to go to her head. She could not explain why, but when she was alone in the woods, sniffing rich earth, wandering through the lacy lanes of ferns, and smelling the pines, she felt like another person. She wished that she had time to dig up one of the tiny new hemlock trees to set out at the front of her corncob house, an idea that she had treasured for some time. But the cold of the woods, now that she had left the sunny road, made her realize that there would not be many more berrying days. She knelt down, dug away the leaves that already were making a thick covering on the earth. It always surprised her to feel how warm the earth kept under the leaves, even on a cold day. Put your hand on your head if you can relate to that. If you've dug into the soil under the leaves in the forest. She dug them aside here and there, uncovering the vines that she wanted. It was delightful to thrust her twig arms up to the elbow in the warm tangle as if to sniff the woods. She began to pick the bright red berries and fill her basket. There was no time to lose, she knew. Mr. Pheasant lived close by and was a famous berry picker. Checkerberries first. They stood up straight, in plain sight on their stems, and could be picked fast. But for preserving and storing away in her acorn jugs for winter, Miss Hickory knew that checkerberry preserve needed a good deal of sweetening, more honey than she had been able to save that season. She picked a few checkerberry leaves. They were tasty and crisp, served with a cup of tea. Next, the partridge berries that ripened close to the ground, little crimson balls and twins, two growing side by side secretly on their low-lying running vine. Miss Hickory canned partridge berries whole in their own sweet juice. As she finished gathering berries and started home with her filled basket, she remembered something that Mr. Pheasant had once told her. "When the partridge berries are ripe," Mr. Pheasant had said, "it is only 2 full moons before the first snowfall." When she came home, Miss Hickory saw that the entire front of her house was covered by the fat, brindled haunches of Mr. T. Willard Brown. He was enjoying the sunshine that trickled down through the bare lilac bushes, and waving his long tail to and fro like a banner. He was a wandering barn cat, a hunter of renown, but Miss Hickory liked him. Mr. T. Willard Brown lived a secret life closer to the ground than did Crow. He was a newsy man and willing to share his stories. "You're late this morning," she told him. The milking was late," he explained. "I can't start the day without my regular breakfast of a dish of warm milk right from the cow." Miss Hickory set down her basket of berries, came close, and looked sharply into Mr. T. Willard Brown's green eyes. "That would be a better story, my friend, if you had washed your face before you told it. There is a feather sticking out of your mouth." She flipped it off. "Oh, my ears and whiskers!" he exclaimed in mock chagrin. "How did I ever get into feathers so early in the morning? Now, if it had been tea time here at the old place, and I had dropped in, and someone had urged me to take a nap on one of those soft feather pillows." He purred loudly to cover his embarrassment. "Never mind," she said. "We all know your habits, Mr. T, and I am glad to see you this morning. Crow called a few days ago." "Don't speak of him!" Mr. T. Willard Brown spat. "I wouldn't eat Crow on a wager. The last time I saw Crow, he walked right toward me and said a bad word. I spat at him." "If you ate Crow occasionally, you might be a better man," she told him. "What I was about to say when you interrupted me was that Crow spoke of the family as planning to leave Hillsboro for the winter. He said that great Granny Brown was thinking of living at the Woman's City Club on Beacon Hill, Boston, and Anne was going to school there. Nothing but hearsay on his part, of course." Mr. T. Willard Brown arose, stretched, and yawned. "Not a plan, not hearsay, my love, but the truth. They have gone." She listened without words, her eyes full of terror. He continued. "You ought to get about more, Miss Hickory. All summer you have stayed here under the lilacs, only going to the woods for berries, or on Sunday when Jack in the pulpit preached. If you had gone around to the front of the house lately, you would have seen the trunks coming down from the attic." "Gone," she breathed at last. Now she knew that it was true. She would not let him see her cry. Instead, she stamped her twig feet. "It's all your fault, Mr. T. They had to leave to get away from you, scratching on doors and purring in the kitchen for milk. You are only a cat with a cat's ways. I shall tell all of Hillsboro what your given name is, Tippy, because you have a white tip on your tail. Willard is for the barn where you were born. Brown is pretense. The hyphen is putting on airs. You are sly, Tippy. I always suspected it." He purred loudly, curling his claws and smiling. I am so famous a mouser that my given name and my humble birth are always overlooked. If you doubt Crow and me, why not go around to the front of the house and look in? See for yourself." He walked away with flowing tail toward the barn. Miss Hickory was unable to move for a space. She watched Mr. T. Willard Brown swinging his sides and disappearing at last through the wide red doors of the barn. Then she walked slowly away from the lilac bush, the corncob house, her basket of berries. She skirted the garden, crossed the lawn, and came to the pink rambler rose trellis beside the front porch. Up the trellis she climbed, braving the sharp thorns, up, until she could peer underneath the crack of the window where the shade was not completely pulled down. Blue rocking chair stood empty and still. The fireplace was boarded. The family Bible on the center table was folded carefully in a white towel. The shining brass pendulum of the grandfather clock hung motionless, and the hands pointed to 8 o'clock. It must, by the shadow on the lawn sundial, be noon now. The old farmer's almanac that had been hung by a loop of string on the wall was gone. She had been alone, without knowing it, for some time. She knew now that everything Crow and Mr. T. Willard Brown has told her was true. Her head would have whirled if it could. She felt too weak to hold on to the rose trellis, but she backed slowly down. Mr. T. Willard Brown was waiting for her, having come softly around the corner of the house. "Well, there you are, Miss Hickory," he purred. "Two of us in the same fix. Why not come over to the barn with me? It is to be kept open all winter, and I have been offered a permanent position as the head ratter." "I wasn't born to live in a barn," she told him desperately. "Where then?" "I'm going home. Today I shall finish my canning." "Home?" He smiled. "Amusing, that. I just passed your house, and it was occupied. You know Chipmunk, of course, who lives in the stone wall and has been so spoiled with gifts of peanuts that he expects to be supported. He has moved into your house, Miss Hickory. I should say, he is there for the winter. He was finishing his dinner when I saw him. Your basket of berries." Dun, dun, dun. And that is the end of chapter 2. What will Miss Hickory do?